Hello, dear friends. It is Dr. Sarah. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to be discussing how essential oils can support brain health, and some may even help your brain grow. I know it sounds crazy, but recently I was elated because I saw reports of the effects of rose oil inhalation making our brains grow go viral in social media. Specifically, the research was related to a groundbreaking study from Kyoto University, and it found that participants that had continuous inhalation of rose oil for 30 days resulted in measurable growth in the gray matter across their whole brain. It was specifically the posterior cingulate cortex, which is a region linked to memory and emotional processing, that was most impacted. Now, this research being celebrated made my heart sing because I have been touting the benefits of essential oils for brain health for years. And this trial brought a whole new spin to it and a lot more attention. So, what I want to do in this video blog is I had a lot of people reach out to me asking me about this study. So, I definitely want to cover that in more details and also some of the caveats to that study that you guys have been asking me about. But I also want to just give a whole overview of how essential oils can support brain health and enhance memory. So what we're going to do in this video is talk about essential oils' effect on brain function, how neuroplasticity, what that is, and how it's impacted by essential oils, the impact of essential oils on brain health, overall brain health. And then I want to talk about this viral study on aromatics with rose oil acting like miracle grow on the brain, but also some of the limitations to consider related to this specific research on brain growth. So all of the references, the resources, the study links, and previous articles that relate to this topic will be linked in the resource section as well as in the links in the accompanying video post. So you'll want to check that out. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, an overview of essential oils' effect on the brain. They can impact brain functioning based on several mechanisms. And there's four main mechanisms when I think of essential oils' effect on brain health. They modulate hormones and brain signaling patterns. So we're talking neurotransmitters and brain signals. They can actually shift the electrical activity of the brain through inhalation. They can protect the nervous system, so they're neuroprotective of the brain, and they can impact neuroplasticity. So modulating hormones and brain signaling patterns, shifting brain electrical activity, protecting the nervous system, neuroprotective, and impacting neuroplasticity. And we also know that various essential oils have different molecular makeups that may be of particular use for specific cognitive functions or for specific areas of brain health. So if we think specifically for memory, I would say rosemary and sage oil, rosemary senol, actually has the most research as far as memory enhancing essential oils. And we also know that this concept of neuroplasticity, essential oils through this scent association can also modulate brain pathways. So if we talk about this fourth aspect of neuroplasticity, the brain adapts to change and novel inflammation by forming new pathways and neural connections. It's called like a rewiring, and it's necessary for our daily functioning and survival. We need to have access to these different learning areas so that we learn from experience, and it's important for survival. But there's sometimes destructive implicit, which are subconscious memories that can bias our everyday processing. Sometimes this is related to trauma, sometimes it's not learning from experience, but these can unconsciously run our life. So we're basing our today's perceptions on something that happened in the past that may not be as accurate or may not serve us. There's a particular technique called the aroma freedom technique that can help pull out these negative thoughts and create this pattern interrupt. So what it does is it incorporates the use of essential oils to stimulate the neurons in our brain to reroute and rewire our thinking in a more positive direction. And it's based on neuroscience, psychology, and how essential oils impact the nervous system and how they impact the vagus tone. So if we look at the aroma freedom technique, what it does is it facilitates neuroplasticity and assists with this memory deconsolidation. So it's going to help break down or bring up these past memories that are no longer serving us, these subconscious memories through scent and through just identifying them. And then we're going to use as essential oils to actually reconsolidate, cause a different memory-based association, because we know essential oils can enhance relaxation so that when you think about that memory, you aren't in survival mode, but you're actually calming the brain down and have a new neural pathway that might better serve you. And then you can link that to different goals or different intentions. So when you rewrite, you're literally rewiring your brain and rerouting it for the better, constructing your brain pathways. And this accelerates our innate capacity to heal not just our minds, but also our bodies. It can help with releasing emotional upheaval, traumas, negative beliefs, and just different behavioral patterns. And I'll have a link to the interview I did with the founder, Dr. Ben Perkis, and AFT in the video description. So if you want to hear that podcast from the Essential Oil Revolution, that whole thing will be there for you, as well as the additional detailed show notes. So those are the four main ways that overall essential oils affect brain functioning. Now, what about brain health? There's different factors that can impact our brain health in different ways. And essential oils can modulate most of these for the better. So if we think about neural inflammation, inflammation is a big aspect of it. And then problems with the immune system can cause our brain health to be dysregulated. And essential oils actually can help balance the immune system, and they're naturally anti-inflammatory. So they're protecting mitochondrial health, the cellular energy of the brain, and helping prevent against the negative impacts of environment exposures with constant inflammation that could cause neurodegeneration. Some essential oils actually support enzymes that help the body detoxify from these environmental triggers, which could impact brain health and brain functioning. So this would safeguard neurons and cellular structures from these environmental insults. They're naturally neuroprotective. We talked about rosemary and sage, preserving cognitive health. And even for people that have had some brain trauma, essential oils can help with some of the characteristics they have for being neuroprotective. They're also antimicrobial, antiviral, antifungal. So if there's any stealth infections in the body that are causing residual immune activity that we do not want, or chronic inflammation, essential oils can help assist with that at the level of some of the cause. They can positively affect neurotransmitters and balance brain biochemistry, which we talked about as far as affecting brain function. They can support digestion, assimilation, a healthy microbiome. They actually balance the microbiome. And this aids in the gut-brain connection, right? So what goes on in your gut is still goes to your brain, and also where most of your neurotransmitters are. They can modulate stress, cortisol, the stress hormone, hormones in general, and resulting blood sugar issues. When these all support emotional balance. And they can also support vagal tone, which enhances parasympathetic activity, which brings calm to the mind and body so that autonomic physiological functioning can be optimized. And finally, just overall emotional health. This is through their biochemical properties, influence on that brain activity. So some of the effects we talked about, and this aromatic-based memory association. So through these concepts of neuroplasticity as well as psychoaromatherapy, they can help us heal from trauma, adversity, and just help balance our brain and the emotional level. So we talked about brain effects, those four main points. We talked about essential oils on brain health by modulating the things that could make our brain not be so healthy or function as well. And what about brain regulation? We talked a little bit about that just now, about the emotional aspect, but essential oils are probably most well known for their stress relieving capability. And this indirectly helps brain regulation because they help regulate our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is a bidirectional biofeedback pathway between our brain and our endocrine system. They can buffer stress at the level of perception so that these stress chemical cascades can't negatively impact our brain. We know that cortisol can actually decrease memory, right? Too much of that stress hormone. They can balance hormones, which influence neurotransmitters, lower cortisol, which I just talked about, that stress hormone, and stimulate the vagus nerve. This is all ways that they can help brain regulation through their ability to calm the stress response. So those are all of the different mechanisms: modulating brain regulation through stress response, helping with brain health impacts, and then just their effects on the brain in those four ways that we talked about, which, just to review very quickly: modulating hormones and brain neurosignaling pathways, shifting brain electrical activity, protecting the nervous system, and impacting neuroplasticity. So all of that, would say, wow, essential oils are really good for our brain, right? That's why I love them. That's why one of my specialties is emotional and mental health, and why I use so many essential oils. Now we will go to this viral study. It was a small study. There were 50 people. They were all female. The researchers wanted to investigate if inhaling this essential oil would actually impact brain health, brain volume. So they used an MRI machine before and then after. They did a comparison about brain, if the brain grew from this inhalation. So there were 28 people in the intervention group. They were given rose oil. They wore it actually as a scent on their clothes for 1 month. So they were indirectly and passively smelling the rose oil. The other group, the 22 with a control group, just had plain water. So the authors reported that the gray matter volume increased in the whole brain and mostly at the posterior cingulate cortex. And they measured this through a gray matter measurement that they do in research studies. The amygdala and the orbital frontal cortex didn't show any changes. So it was mostly in this area, the posterior cingulate cortex. And this area is involved with memory odor associations, memory retrieval from odors, right? This is like kind of where the neuroplasticity part comes in, and somatic memory processes. So also, what we want to keep in mind is intensity and pleasantness of smells are also processed in different areas of the brain. So this could also impact why specific areas were more activated than others. So intensity is observed in the primary olfactory cortex. So it's kind of the same intensity throughout the whole study. So that probably wouldn't activate that region in the brain so much. Also, pleasurable smells are interpreted by the secondary olfactory cortex, including this orbital frontal cortex. And this orbital frontal cortex directs input from the olfactory tract, and it's involved in odor identification and olfactory memorization. So remember that these smells are more common. So that part of the brain might not be as busy in identifying these two odors. And then the PCC, which is the area that was impacted, is activated by pleasant and unpleasant scents. And the OFC is stimulated by mostly pleasant scents, and the amygdala mostly by strong or unfamiliar scents. So that wouldn't even be a factor here, because these two smells are pretty well known and they're not dangerous. So that is the first caveat to that study, is that they used these essential oils that might only specifically be more aimed toward that region of the brain that they did find was affected. I mean, we can't erase the fact that gray matter volume growth occurred, but it'd definitely be stimulating that through this neuroplasticity pathways. Some of the other limitations that were, according to the authors, was, again, these were only women that were in the study, so we can't reflect the results into the whole population. We don't know if men who smelled the rose oil would have the same effect, or other ethnicities, etc. The study didn't also take into account some what we call confounding factors that would have biased the results. Things like the woman's lifestyle, her exercise, her diet, her education, her career. These factors alone can impact brain volume growth. The study wasn't truly double-blinded, right? So there wasn't really a true placebo, because you can tell if you're smelling rose oil if you can't smell anything at all. So that would limit the generalizability of the study. There's some other things that I also think might limit the generalizability. Again, I'm not disintegrating the fact that there was gray volume matter that grew, that got bigger in the brain. That's pretty cool, the results. But there's some other things we want to think about. So we can only extrapolate the findings of this study based on rose oil and based on the fact that it impacts gray matter volume in a select population of women, not to the general population. That's, again, why sometimes they do trials with a mix of different people, because that makes it more generalizable. The participants weren't even monitored for adherence, so this could skew the results. Maybe some of them didn't wear the rose oil one day. Maybe some of them wore it and used more. We don't know. This third thing is they use this diproline glycol to dilute the essential oil. So again, most people don't use this diproline glycol, which is a combination of propylene glycol, and it's safer, it's less irritating, it has some antimicrobial properties, it has high water retention, it can enhance the shelf life of the product. So if you're wearing it for 30 days, that makes sense. But they're not actually studying inhalation of pure rose oil. Okay. They also didn't study if a perfume-based rose scent would have these effects with all of the different petrochemicals in them. So just smelling a rose scent from some plug-in isn't going to provide the same results. We know that too. At least we can't say it will based on this study. So again, those are some things to consider whenever we're looking at the scientific research. We have to look at generalizability, what it did and did say, and sometimes the media is awesome at making these big extrapolations. But again, when we're doing a controlled experiment like this, we have to bring it in, reel it into what the specific results say for a specific population. All right, so that is my take on that study and the overall impact of essential oils on brain health. We talked about how they impact brain functioning because they modulate hormones and brain signaling patterns. They shift brain electrical activity. They protect the nervous system. They impact neuroplasticity. They can also address underlying triggers that could cause dysfunction in brain health, such as high inflammation, acting as antioxidants and neuroprotectors, and aiding detoxification and digestion. They can induce relaxation, relieve stress, assist with emotional processing through their various mechanisms. And then recently, a new study added they might actually help us grow our gray matter in our brain. So this is pretty cool. I would love to hear your response if you have favorite oils for memory, different brain health, for functioning patterns. And I just would love to hear your feedback. I read all the comments. Go ahead and check out the links if you want more essential oil information like this or Mind Body. I also have just generalized naturopathic and functional medicine topics that you won't see necessarily on my social media that goes out to my e-newsletter. So you might want to subscribe to that, and also some different promotions and things that I use in practice that only go out to my subscribers.